Hey guys, it's Riley,
Evan.
and we're here to give another update on what's going on. And lots happened, as always. And I think what we're going to focus a lot on for this one is a lot of the changes that have been made in the build for the basic movement and stuff like that. And we were having some difficulties trying to get the jumping and platforming to feel right, particularly with wall jump, because we were sort of battling over. It's a tricky thing because to have a smooth wall jump, the guy has to be able to do it pretty easily, go from wall to wall. But then at the same time, that makes it easy for the player to exploit that and jump up walls and do all sorts of things. And we really weren't sure how to find like the happy medium. But I forgot whose idea it was, but someone had the great idea of playing other platformers, particularly ones that we used for inspiration for the game. And one big inspiration for the game was Super Meat Boy. And playing Super Meat Boy helped a lot, and things like any other game really.
Yeah, I mean, because if you're looking for a platformer that is almost like known for just how tight its like controls are, like Super Meat Boy is like top of the list almost every time.
Absolutely, yeah. And what really caught our eye for that was in Super Meat Boy, when you jump off a wall, you jump out and up. You jump out a pretty significant amount, and that little jump out allows, when there's two platforms right next to each other, all you have to do is tap jump, and you're automatically flinging right to that wall.
Yeah.
And for us, we were thinking, we don't want, we didn't have that little loop out there, so the player had to. It was a lot more like, if you're on a keyboard, a lot more finger movement because you're up, over, side, all this stuff, and it felt way too clunky. And just that quick tap felt so good. Mm-hmm. So we had some adjustments made, for how far out the player goes, and just little things. It's really kind of amazing that little things like that make such a difference.
It's honestly, it's like the simple answers. Like a lot of times you run into a problem, like programming-wise, design-wise, where it's just like, wow, like what am I going to do? And you start constructing this like huge like
elaborate
like you're like
solution.
if I create this like if I create a 20,000 line code, that'll fix everything. But then like your friend will come in and he'll be like, oh, why don't you just have this be true, and then everything works, and you're like, holy wow.
Yeah, which is one lesson I think that I've learned, we've all learned from this, is sometimes it really does help to step away and, to look at it from a different kind of angle, or even step away and observe something else. I mean, nothing in our game is completely unique to other games. But obviously, just like any other game ever made, it has its inspirations, it takes inspirations from lots of different games and experiences that I've had. Mm-hmm. And Super Meat Boy is one of my favorite platforming games. So I think playing that helped a lot. And as far as like the jumping mechanics go, it helped shape that. Mm-hmm. I think as far as tone and art goes, Limbo was like a big inspiration as well. Mm-hmm. But that's for another day. Yeah. But as far as the actual movement goes, it's difficult to explain without showing, which I think I've said like 100 times.
Yeah.
Per
video.
Yeah, probably. But basically, what I'm saying is we had these problems, and like Evan was saying, these small solutions seem to be the answer, and it's relieving because a lot of those major problems that we were having were fixed by like really, really pretty simple things. Mm-hmm. And one thing we were kind of juggling back and forth with was, is the player going to have momentum like in the air and stuff like that, which is tricky because when you're moving from one side of the platform to the other, or one side of the level to the other with momentum, you start flying like way too fast. At least was our issue. And again, like looking at other games, Braid, whatever else, like platformers, and trying to see, well, how'd they do it? And
yeah, and it's it's best to visualize like the feel, like when you're visualizing your game, just seeing how your character moves, and then imagining, I guess, how. So if you want your character to like jump, and then land, and then he's just like that, then you have to figure out whether or not you need momentum, or if you need some other function to, I guess, be applied, or if not, like, I guess.
Basically, it was between having momentum and having constant motion. And constant motion would just mean when I start moving, that's as fast as I'm going, and that's it. Momentum, you start, you're slow, and then you pick up.
And controlling that, at least our experience in trying to control that was
it was a little tricky the way that we had it set up. And what's funny about that, again, there's always multiple ways to do something, especially when it comes to making a game. And we started to think, well, it's one or the other, like one of these has to be right. But again, like going back and playing other games, we were playing one game, and we're like, oh, well, this one uses momentum, so that must be the right way to do it. And then you play another one, you're like, well, this one's constant motion, and this one's awesome too. Yeah. And it involves so much little tweaking and playing with things. Yeah. And I think we get a little when we're testing, we get a little anxious, or at least I do, to where if it doesn't feel right, I'm like, no, like this has to be, like you gotta fix it. But again, I think the biggest lesson that we learned for this week was a little bit of patience, kind of stepping back and looking at what our core inspirations were, and looking at, and we've only really been looking at indie games for inspiration, but these guys who make these video games are unbelievably talented, and like they're up here, and we're like down here looking up at them. So
climbing up that ladder.
Exactly. So being able to look at how they did it helps us a lot. And again, I'm really proud of how unique our game is and how it stands out from everything else. But
for sure,
again, the best lesson that we learned was, it doesn't hurt to consider other options, or to at least observe other
I would
options.
say, like, in whatever you're working on, like if you're working on a project and you're having a hard time, getting the right, I guess, feel or the right product that you're trying to make. If it comes to games, maybe like we did, take a look at other games, ones that you are competing with or going to be competing with, or trying to not
in the same
not
vein,
steal from, but emulate, like ones that you're supposed that you're building yourself after. If you're making music, think about the kind of music you're making. Listen to stuff like that. Like if you're trying to make a blues album or something, listen.
Yeah, your inspiration.
Yeah, listen to Hugh Laurie. Listen to John Coltrane, Raymond Johnson.
Good reference drops there. I like it.
Boom, boom, boom.
Bam, boom, right up in here. But
yeah. Just if you're having a hard time, look to who you idolize, and
we idolize guys like Ed McMillan and Phil Fish and Jonathan Blow.
Yeah. Name drop, boom, boom.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it for this week, and we'll see you next time. Yeah. Oh wait, I must bang on.